this exciting book launch of Decoding the Heart. Before we begin, I have to mention a couple of other upcoming events. We're going to be hosting a talk by Laura Pina and Have Yoshimoto on Friday, August 15th. That's at 6:30, and they're going to be talking about their new cookbook, which is a wonderful cookbook called Word of Mouth, Asian American Artists Sharing Recipes. It features the art and food of 23 Asian American artists. And if you're attending the Tallgrass Festival, hosted by the Lyceum this weekend, we'll be selling books there on Friday evening and all day Saturday. Then on Thursday, August 22nd, we will be hosting Elise Wayland with her new romance, Rivals to Lovers. You can find all the details on our website, or you can pick up a flyer at the register, or even better, sign up for our newsletter to keep up on all the events that we're doing. Now, for tonight's program, it is my pleasure to welcome Stephanie R. Caffrey, a romantic suspense author who lives with her family right here in the Midwest. When she's not working on her books, she's a substitute teacher, and she loves to write fan fiction. She is a proud, marginalized voice in the Mexican-American community, and I think she is a very busy lady because besides writing, she enjoys sewing, knitting, and cross-stitching. So please join me in welcoming Stephanie Caffrey.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming to my book launch. It's the first book in a new series. This new series is the Profiling the Heart series. It follows a team of FBI agents. There are 5 members of the team, but there's only 4 books in the series. Each book will follow a different FBI member, except for one, my friend Logan. He is our steadfast, in a loving, committed relationship member of the team, and the rest of the team goes to him for advice as they start meeting the loves of their life. So, the first book, Decoding the Heart, follows Matthew. He is the crime scene expert of the group, so he can go to a crime scene and read it really well. Book 2 will be about Millie. She's our female member of our team. And then book 3 will be Trevor. He's our tech genius on the team. And then book 4 would be Thomas, and he's the leader of everybody. And the books can all be read as a standalone. But unlike the London Detective Agency, I do tie them together through each book. So there will be an ongoing mystery that leaps from book to book until it gets wrapped up in the final book with Thomas. So get in now so you can that serial killer as he makes his way down the eastern seaboard. Kind of, you know. So my tradition at my events is to read the first chapter of my book. So I'm going to read the first chapter. It's a little longer than the other ones, so I'll try not to make it too boring. All right, chapter 1, Matthew, Friday, May 15th. You can't possibly be the only driver who works this early, Jorge. Matthew Grant opened the door to the car and slid his duffel bag onto the seat. I'm starting to think you have an alert set up to tell you when I'm requesting an Uber. The driver of the compact sedan turned back to look at him as he slid into the almost too small for his frame back seat. You know me, Maddie. I'm obsessed with true crime, and you, my friend, are always a source to feed my addiction. Matthew laughed, shaking his head. And I always tell you, I can't discuss my case. Jorge turned back around and put the car in drive. Traffic wasn't heavy in Matthew's neighborhood this early in the morning, so he had no problem pulling away from the curb and into the right lane. I know, but you always end up giving me a little kernel to tide me over until you get home. So what is it this time? Serial killer. He shifted so his long legs didn't feel so cramped behind the passenger seat. He really needed to remember to remind Jorge to pull the seat as far forward as possible next time. 3 victims so far. Local? I haven't heard anything on the news, but I've been keeping strange hours. No, not local, hence the 4:30 drive to the bureau. Midwest somewhere, I think. I wasn't fully awake when my director made the wake-up call. Jorge let out a low whistle. Midwest is not exactly the place that comes to mind when I think serial killer. My brain immediately goes somewhere big, like here in D.C., or like New York or something. BTK was in Kansas, John Wayne Gacy, Illinois, Jeffrey Dahmer, Wisconsin. The people who commit these crimes can be anywhere, and with the right triggers, will act on their nascent desires. Here I am claiming to be a true crime fan and forgot where these notorious serial killers hunted. Sometimes it's easy to superimpose your beliefs into the narrative. You think serial killers only really exist in large coastal cities, so you've placed the narratives of these notorious killers in those locations. Jorge chuckled. You're doing your profile thing on me. I'm sorry, Matthew apologized. No, man, I love it. I welcome it. Makes me feel a part of the whole thing, you know? Matthew laughed. I'll remember that for next time. They pulled up in front of the FBI Academy building, the 12-minute drive from his home in Garrisonville having gone quickly, as it always does when he was in the car with Jorge. Thanks for the ride, as always. Jorge reached into his cup holder and stretched back. Matthew took the card from his hands. That's my personal number. When you get back in town, call me and I'll give you a ride home. I won't have to stop the app that way. Matthew pocketed the card. Thanks. I'll call you. I don't know what time or when. Just call me. Don't matter the time or whatever. This is my side hustle. I work from home and it's very flexible. I want to hear whatever you can tell me about this new Midwest serial killer. Matthew opened the door, grabbed his duffel, and threw the strap over his shoulder. I will tell you everything I can. I promise. Hope you catch the asshole. I hope we do too. Matthew walked through the glass doors of the small meeting room, completely bypassing a stop at his desk. If he stopped, he would get dragged into something else he was working on and be late to the debrief. He prided himself on being one of the first of his behavioral analysis unit team to arrive at the debrief. It probably stemmed from being one of the youngest on the team, the need to always prove himself. Even after nearly a decade of him being on the team, he still couldn't let it go. Sure enough, looking around the room, the only other person present was Thomas Fleming, the director and team leader, sitting at the head of the single table, watching the door for his team. He was in his early 60s, but nowhere near ready to retire. And of course, even with all the stresses of the job, his face didn't have a clue to how old he was. The black skin of his face as smooth as Matthew's. Maddie, first, as always. I don't know how you do it. I could say the same to you. Do you live here? Thomas gave him a wry smile. Well, honestly, Carl and I are not in the best place right now, so I've been spending a lot of time here. It's why I could get the call so quickly. I'm sorry, ma'am. Want to talk about it? Matthew cringed. He didn't know why he asked that. Silently, he hoped Thomas would turn him down. Thomas cocked his head to the side, looking at Matthew strangely. You want to talk to me about my marriage problems? Matthew shrugged, forcing a smile on his face. He was certain looked more like a grimace. Yes? Thomas shook his head, eyebrows still raised. Advice from my coworker who is perpetually single and 2 decades younger than me? No, thank you. Matthew held his hand over his heart, letting out the breath he was holding. Ouch. What in that sentence wasn't true? It was all true, but as they say, truth hurts. If I'm going to get advice from anyone, I'm going to get it from Logan, the only one of us in a stable, happy relationship. Great idea. Logan would give much better advice than I ever could. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Logan Hayes came waltzing in through the door to the conference room. The next senior member of the team didn't look as put together as he normally did. His sandy blonde hair hadn't been shellacked into place yet. He must have spent much longer saying goodbye to his husband. What will I be better than you? Giving relationship advice. Logan grinned widely, causing the crow's feet on either side of his blue eyes to deepen. Hell yes. Who needs advice? Thomas? Everything okay with you and Carla? Thomas opened his mouth to answer, but was saved when the door opened again, letting in Millie Driscoll and Trevor Ford, the last 2 members of the team. Millie and Trevor had joined the team around the same time, shortly before Matthew had. It was a running joke that they came as a pair. Millie, with her black curly hair and fair complexion, looked every bit the part of someone who had a goth phase growing up. Was one of the nicest people Matthew had ever met, but don't let her, being the only female on the team, lure you into false presumptions. She was definitely the toughest member of the team, willing to take steps others weren't. They were lucky to have managed to snap Trevor up when they did. He was the best hacker around. His caramel skin and dark brown eyes were a definite contrast to Millie's paler complexion. The 2 were best friends and always together. All right, we're all here. Let's go over what we know, Thomas said. Trevor moved to the front of the room and connected his laptop to the HDMI cable. Once he opened the screen, a map projected onto the TV screen behind him. Everyone took their seats, Matthew settling in between Millie and Logan, Thomas taking his place next to Trevor in front of the room. Here's what we know, Thomas began. Cove Creek, Iowa is a city with a population of about 12,000. In the last 3 months, there have been 3 murders. Trevor pressed the button, and 3 crime scene photos came up on the screen. He touched the first one, enlarging it. Victim number 1, killed 3 months ago on February 20th. His name was Mark Lovett, age 35. Blunt force trauma to the head and strangled. He changed the picture. Victim number 2, killed 2 weeks ago. His name was John Davies, age 35. Same MO as Lovett. He cued the next image. Victim number 3, killed yesterday. His name was David Crandall, age 35. Same MO as the other 2. He's escalating, Matthew spoke up. His cooldown period was approximately a quarter of the time between Vicks 2 and 3, as it was between 1 and 2. Which is why we were called in, Thomas explained. The local authorities are concerned with how little time has passed between the last 2 victims. Cove Creek is not a large town, and the fact that someone is killing their men is becoming very concerning. Any connection between our victims? Millie asked. Other than age, there doesn't seem to be anything obvious. Mark and John were married with young children, but didn't really run the same social circles. David was single, and again, at the surface level, didn't seem to hang out with either Mark or David. But these are things I'm planning to dig into further as we get fully into the case. I haven't had time yet, Trevor said. Are you staying at the office or coming with us? Matthew asked. Coming. I don't know what the cell's coverage is like into small-town Iowa. I want to make sure I'm close so we can communicate. The more feet on the ground in Cove Creek, the better. We want to make sure there aren't any more victims than there are already. Take care of what you need to in order to be ready for a long-term stay. Wheels up in 30. Thomas dismissed them, and they all stood to leave the room. Matthew stretched as the plane landed. 3 hours of sitting in one spot took a toll on his back. He wasn't as young as he used to be. He stood and gathered his things. Matthew and Logan will head out to take a look at the crime scene. Trevor, Millie, and I will head to the precinct and talk to the chief and get Trevor set up in a room there. Sounds good. Matthew preferred heading out to the crime scene over talking to the other officers. He wanted a clear head when he took everything in. Without the influence of other people, Millie always joked the crime scene could speak to him, but he didn't think that was wrong. He didn't fully understand why his brain worked the way it did, but whenever he surveyed a crime scene, it was as if it were really talking to him. He could see things no one else could, which is why 9 times out of 10, Thomas would send him to the crime scene first. He stepped onto the concrete ground of the hangar and spotted the Bureau vehicles parked about 12 feet away. He and Logan fell into step, heading toward the nearest of the black SUVs. Logan stepped in the driver's seat while Matthew climbed into the passenger seat. As soon as he had the belt clipped around him, Logan pulled out of the hangar. As they drove, Matthew opened the folder he had been reading on the plane. What can we expect? Logan asked. Well, we're heading to Murphy's Woods, a popular hiking and biking trail here. It's where all 3 bodies were found. Dumping ground or murder location? From what I can tell, dumping ground. Logan sighed. I hate when they move the bodies. Well, maybe we'll luck out and he didn't move them very far. It didn't take long to get to Murphy's Woods. The town was on the smaller side. Logan pulled the SUV into a parking lot that butted up against a wooded area. The local police officer was already there waiting. You know, when I think woods, I like to think of them being a little bit more remote than this. Logan gestured toward the sidewalk, where there was a bike fixing station, a water fountain, and a bathroom, all leading toward the paved trail that led into the copse of trees. Yeah, not exactly what I was picturing in my head when I read the name or saw the pictures of where the bodies were found, Matthew replied. Not remote. Seems like it could possibly be very populated. How did this guy get the bodies here without anyone seeing anything? Good question. The 2 men pushed open their doors and stepped out. It was mid-May. The sun was at its highest point and the temperature was rising. At the cusp of summer in Iowa, it was warm. Too warm for all the layers Matthew wore to look professional. He should have forgotten the suit jacket once he learned he was going to the scene. Agents, the officer on the scene, greeted them. I'm Officer Smith. She reached out, offered her hand. I'm Special Agent Grant, and this is Special Agent Hayes, Matthew said, taking her hand, followed by Logan. Are there any cameras or anything at this park? Officer Smith shook her head. Unfortunately, no. If there were, our jobs would be a lot easier. Can you take us to where they found the bodies? Right this way. They started on the trail. As they entered the woods, the trees grew denser, causing everything to fall into shadows. On either side of the trail, native grasses grew uncontrolled, and Matthew was pretty sure he spotted some poison ivy in the mix. It was early in the season, but the grass was already about 6 inches high. Who found the bodies? Matthew asked. A bicyclist found the first one. Since it was February, he was easy to spot. It was an unusually warm day, otherwise he wouldn't have been found as quickly. These trails are almost abandoned in the winter, except for the rare dog walker or bicyclist. Joggers found the second one. Again, everything was still dormant, so it was easy to spot. A family out doing our county's annual geocache challenge found the most recent victim. Their 5-year-old son tripped over the body. With the grasses so high, he was not as noticeable as the last 2. Matthew grimaced. That poor kid. He would be in therapy for a long time, processing the sort of trauma that comes with finding a dead body. As they walked, Matthew glanced around at their surroundings. The trail, while it was in the woods, wasn't really in an isolated area. In fact, you could see the backs of houses peeking through the trees. Do any of these houses have cameras pointed toward the trail, or wildlife cameras? Matthew asked. No, Officer Smith replied. Unfortunately, if they have cameras on the backs of their houses, they are pointed at their own property. And since the only wildlife we tend to get are the white-tailed deer, which are here in abundance, there are no wildlife cameras. That's unfortunate because this isn't exactly an isolated area, Logan said. It is not, Matthew agreed. With these houses barely concealed by the trees, the traffic on the trail, our unsub is bold. There's no privacy here. Narcissistic, Logan added. Yeah, definitely dealing with a narcissist. We're here, Officer Smith said, coming to a stop in front of a large copse of trees. The ground was overgrown and the grass was pressed down to create a makeshift path from the trail to the tree just wide enough for a person to walk through. Lots of people walked off trail here, probably because of the county geocache. The tree was probably where it was hidden. The bodies, Matthew started, were found about 5 feet from the trail, Officer Smith gestured in the direction of the tree. All of them, in this specific area, Logan asked? All of them. Right here, same spot. So this is the dumping ground, Matthew clarified. Yes. Matthew looked at the long grass. It looked like it would come about mid-calf. How much poison ivy will I get if I wade in there? You're wearing long pants, so I wouldn't worry, Officer Smith said. Matthew nodded as he looked down, his forehead wrinkling. He took a deep breath and let it out. He would trust a local that this wouldn't end with him getting an unbearable rash. He stepped into the grass and cringed as the thorns of one of the plants caught on his slacks. Remind me to dress in my jeans the next time I come out here, he called to Logan. Noted. Matthew carefully moved toward the spot Officer Smith had pointed out. As he got closer, it became fairly obvious. There was a depression in the grass about the size of a body. Found the spot, he called out. Matthew squatted down to get a better look. The spot didn't look any different from the rest of the area. He glanced back toward the trail. They weren't far apart. He looked beyond the trail, and it seemed the trees were thicker here. The houses were more concealed. Matthew turned his head. Same on this side. If there was any spot in the woods he could call isolated, this would be it. Officer Smith, are there any houses beyond these trees? He gestured in both directions. One or two, but mostly farmland on either side, she answered. The neighborhood on the left ends in a cul-de-sac. The other side hasn't sold out to the developers yet. Our unsub has to be really familiar with the trail to know exactly where the houses stop and the farmland begins, Logan said. Yeah, but he also dragged a body incredibly far down this trail in order to dump it somewhere without any homes. Any of the owners of the other houses could have seen him, especially in February when the trees would be bare. Matthew made his way back to the trail. We're looking at someone who can carry a grown man quite a distance. Unsub. You've said that word twice now, and I have to admit I'm not familiar with it, Officer Smith said. Unknown subject, Logan explained. We should head to the hotel and catch up with the others. Matthew smacked a mosquito that landed on his neck. And we can come back out here when we're more prepared for the elements. Matthew pulled the SUV to a stop in front of a red brick building. He checked the address on the GPS against the address on the property. You sure we have the right place? Logan asked. This doesn't look like any hotel we normally stay in. The structure looked like it had been built in the late 19th or earliest 20th century and had once been a large house originally before being taken over as a hotel. 2 stories tall and completely made of brick, it had white trim and a beautiful flower garden out front, surrounding a covered porch. It was very quaint, as if it had been taken out of time. It's the right address, and it says Noble Hill Hotel on the sign, so I'm guessing yes. We're in the right place, Matthew answered. Looks nicer than the roach motels we're usually put up in when we come to these small towns, Logan observed. It does. I don't think I'll need to worry about bed bugs here. Or our room looking like someone could have been murdered there. Or they use it to film porn. Or it's haunted. Matthew laughed. I wouldn't rule out haunting out here. This place definitely looks like it could be haunted. They laughed before opening the doors to the SUV, reaching behind their seats to grab their duffels. Matthew clicked the key lock as they headed up the brick pathway to the front door. The covered porch had several cushioned chairs and tables spread out across it, creating an inviting space to spend a morning drinking coffee or an evening drinking wine. He pushed the wooden door open and stepped into the inviting entryway. The hardwood floors glistened under the various throw rugs. The room was decorated period appropriately, with antiques scattered around. The couches looking both inviting, but also like you probably shouldn't sit on them. The desk sat empty with a sign telling them to ring the bell for service. Instead of a period appropriate brass push bell, it was a wireless doorbell. Matthew pushed it and waited. A door opened from the back of the building and shut, the creaking floorboards indicating that someone was coming. I'm sorry I've kept you waiting, a female voice said before appearing around the corner. I wasn't expecting anyone so early. Matthew did a double take. He was expecting an elderly woman. Wasn't that usually who ran places like this? Instead, he was greeted by a woman in her 30s. She was wearing baggy old olive overalls over a black t-shirt. Her long dark hair was pulled up in a messy ponytail, and she was trying to flatten flyaway hair with her hands as she walked toward them. When you called to book the place, you implied you wouldn't be in until much later, so I laid down to take a quick nap. I'm so sorry. Matthew shook his head, telling himself not to stare. We're in early, Logan spoke up. Turns out we are not prepared to traipse around in the woods. The woman looked them up and down as she took her place behind the desk. I'll say, at least you're wearing long pants. Poison ivy is terrible this year. She opened a laptop on her desk and typed in the password. All right, which two are you? Hayes and Grant, Logan answered. Matthew couldn't seem to find his voice, and he couldn't stop staring at the woman. There was something wrong with him. Right, you two are neighbors. Rooms 5 and 7, upstairs. Here are your keys. She pulled 2 keys off the corkboard behind her. Breakfast is in the dining room starting from 7, but you can have access to the kitchen for other meals if you would like. Let's see what else. I keep the door unlocked until around 10, but if you're staying out later, please let me know, and I'll keep it unlocked a little longer. I live here on the premises. I'll be here through the weekend, but on weekdays, I'm at my other job. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Your name? Matthew cringed at how loud he sounded. You haven't told us your name. She laughed, and Matthew was certain he had never heard a more beautiful sound. Rebecca. My name is Rebecca. She met his gaze and smiled widely at him, and he swore his heart skipped a beat when his brown eyes met her hazel eyes. We'll get off your hair and let you get back to your nap. Logan swiped both keys off the counter and handed one to Matthew. The others won't be here for a while. They aren't in the outdoors. Rebecca laughed again. Noted. Have a pleasant stay. Thanks, Matthew said, turning around, his cheeks burning. He and Logan headed toward the stairs, but not before he looked over his shoulder at Rebecca again. Their eyes met, and he turned away quickly. Dude, Logan said as they walked up the stairs, you're acting like you've never seen an attractive woman before. Pretty sure I haven't until now. And that is the first chapter. You'll just have to take your own copy to see how awkward Matthew can get before things develop with Rebecca, and see if they catch the serial killer. Hi. Does anyone have any questions for me about?
Have you started the other 3 books yet?
I am about 3/4 of the way on book 2. It comes out February 10th, so I gotta get to my publisher. She said no later than November, so my goal is to try to get a first draft done before school starts on the 25th. So we're trucking away. I just went on a 2-week vacation and I brought my laptop. And I'm like, we're going to be in the car for so many hours. I could get this book written. Totally. I wrote 2,000 words. And we'd get to our campsites and I would just go to sleep by the time we were done doing what we were doing. So I didn't get much written on our trip, but I have goals. Goals. School starts in 2 weeks. I can get this done.
Wow, that is so ambitious.
Is the hotel based on any particular place?
I kind of based it off of bed and breakfast up in Ames. I kind of based the whole town of Cove Creek off of Ames, but I wanted to do a fictional town in Iowa this time. I did 2 books based in London, and that was a lot trying to make sure I was keeping it accurate. But making my own town, I don't have to make sure that I didn't name a street wrong, or I put a store where it doesn't belong, or I can create a cool bed and breakfast. But there's one that used to be a frat house up in Ames, and it turned into a bed and breakfast, and so I scrolled through their pictures and used it as my inspiration.
Okay, because I've known you for a long time, I am curious how your process in writing has changed from your very first book to now.
Well, for my very first book, that took me 10 years to write. It took me 10 years to write that first book and get the courage to put it out in the world. And going through the editing process with that book and getting it signed to 2 different publishers before I got where it is really shaped my writing. Working with my agent and the editors at both publishing houses really helped me hone my skills a little bit. And so Be My Little Baby came out. I wrote that a lot quicker than Mistaken Identity. This one I wrote a lot quicker than the first 2. And my editor at Rowan Prose said that by the time I gave it to her, it didn't need as much work done on it as she thought it would. In fact, she told me that in one of her notes was, I forgot I was supposed to be editing while I was reading, and I got super into it because I wanted to know who the killer was, so I had to go back and do it. So right now, that's also a hindrance. Right now, as I'm writing this new book, I have the voices of the editors in my head, and I'm writing, and I'm like, oh, no. They would tell me not to do that. Or every scene has to have 2 sensory details this scene doesn't have a sensory detail, so it took me a lot longer to just put the words there, because I have all these little voices in my head, because I want, once I get it to my publisher, to have less work to do on the other end.
Oh, but don't let them cramp your creativity.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You
I know,
know?
it's just like, I can't say the word just. I got to find another word for that. Or
What word?
just. That is
Just?
my just. That is my overused word. My agent, when she gave me back my manuscript, was like, all right, you're going to control F every just in this book. And you're going to try to find a different way to say this. You cannot say this word 300 times. And then the word said. I control F the word said on Decoding the Heart, and it came up 500 times. Had to get that down to way less than that. So I have all these things like, well, I don't want to have to go back and reword said, so I gotta make sure I don't have that. I don't want to have to go back and reword this, so but I'm at the point where I have I am about ready to reveal who the serial killer is in book 2. So I'm like, I just gotta get these words written, so I have it down.
Yeah.
I have a team who will read it for me, and they will help me. I'm like, I just gotta get to my team before school starts.
Right. For school. So, gotta have goals.
Yeah, goals. Any other questions?
I've been privy to your other kind of creative writing. Have you ever thought about a different genre geared towards kids because you work with kids?
I have thought about it, but I don't know. I would have to come up with some good ideas. I tried to write just like a historical romance with no suspense, and I kind of petered out because I'm like, I can't not have them in danger, but they have to be in danger, and so I've kind of shelved that. So I'm thinking I'll rework it. You would probably be interested in that one because it's about post-World War II Des Moines and Iowa State. And my main male character just came back from the war, admitted on the GI Bill, and his love interest just graduated Iowa State with a degree in journalism, and she's trying to find her way in a man's world while juggling this new romance with this guy who just came back with trauma from the war.
Oh.
And
That sounds like a good story.
yeah, they're not in danger, and so I could not find conflict for them. So I shelved it. I might see if I could find some danger for them, or maybe
Just a little tension. Maybe blood.
But
Oh, that
yeah,
sounds
so
good.
I have some other ideas. I signed this 4-book contract with my publisher, and she booked out I've got books coming out every 6 months for the next 2 years. So I'm hoping to get a kind of a head on this series because I have another idea brewing. Like I had to open my laptop while we were driving and write the first chapter of this new idea, and then tuck it away because I need to focus on other things.
Yep.
But yeah, I could probably write a children's book. I don't know.
Talk a little bit about the title. How did you come up with it, or?
I did. Well, I had some help from my team. I have 3 women I work with as a team. One's in Florida, and she has a degree in English. One's here, and she has a degree in English. And they are my technical people. They help me figure out my plot. And then I have a friend here who's also local, who is just a reader. She just reads, and she reads this genre. And so she reads it and tells me, from the reader's point of view, how the book is. I wanted to play with the idea that he's always he's an analytical person. He has a hard time finding his feelings. So he has never been in love. He has a hard time being close to people, forming relationships, even with these people on his team. And so playing on that, on his analytical mind, I was like decoding the heart. He's trying to, open his heart and find love. And so I kind of base a lot of them off of that same play for the rest of the books. And then the whole series is profiling the heart because they're all profilers.
Well, I'm ready to read it.
All right. I think she's ready to sign some
All right,
books.
I can
Okay.
sign some books.
Cool.
Oh, one question.
Yes.
What was your inspiration for this book?
Oh, so back in 2019, I had a baby. And then the pandemic hit. And I was like, well, I gotta find some stuff to keep me busy and watch at home. And I was like, you know what? I like true crime. So I started watching the show Criminal Minds. And I binged that show. It was like 8 seasons, 10 seasons, lots of seasons. It got to the point where my daughter would be crawling around and they'd be like, it's time to present the profile. And she'd come in and sit there and watch them present the profile. And then after they presented the profile, she'd crawl on out. But I really liked that show. And I was like, you know what this show is missing? Romance. No, none of them have a romance. There's no romance subplot in the show. And so I was like, I think I could write something that's pretty similar. And these people deserve happiness when they're dealing with all this. And so I was only going to write one book. It was going to be one book and be done. But then I started thinking, you know what would be fun? If all of them can have a love story. You know what would be fun? To have a continuing arc of this serial killer that Thomas will catch in book 4. And so the serial killer gets introduced here. He taunts Thomas throughout the series. And then Thomas gets to catch him at the end. And as you can tell from the first chapter, he's having trouble with Carla, his wife. So by book 4, he and Carla are going to hopefully reconcile.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you